Welcome to Islamic Life Coach School Podcast. Apply tools that you learn in this podcast and your life will be unrecognizably successful. Now your host, Dr. Kamal Akhtar.
Hello everyone. Peace and blessings be upon all of you. In today's podcast, I want to talk to you guys about what it means to channel your emotions, specifically anger, given that this is one of the highest vibrational negative energy emotion, and it is really felt very intensely in the body. I want to focus today's podcast on just channeling anger. So like always, I tell you guys, anger, disappointment, upset, helplessness, or any of these negative emotions are not the problem. All of these emotions, just like everything created by Allah, is here to teach us a lesson. The type of channeling that I'm requesting for you to do is to slow down enough to listen to what the emotion is saying instead of reacting from it, and then using that energy to direct it in the right form of action. Anger, just like anything else, itself is not intrinsically negative. It is not a moral failure. Anger, like any other emotion, is energy. Human beings are experiential, and they use the fuel of emotions to translate that energy into action. While anger can be destructive, it can also be protective, activating, and very directional. It shows up when someone or something that matters to you has been sidelined or ignored, when an internal or external boundary has been crossed. So the problem is not with anger itself. The problem is what happens when anger is unchanneled. Unchanneled anger spills into your relationships, into your physical health, into a lot of these sensations getting trapped into the body if not processed or listened to properly. This shows up as diseases. This shows up as reactivity. This shows up as rupture in your relationships. And this behavior, when coming from unrefined anger, is what undermines your own objectives in your relationships, and you self-sabotage in that sense. Channeled anger, on the other hand, is a usable force. So the work here is not to get rid of anger, but to learn how to carry it without being carried by it. What it actually means to channel an emotion is to convert the energy into choice. An emotion is channeled when, despite of its intensity, you still have access to how you think, how you speak, and how you act. You can tap into your body, notice all of its sensations with all of the intensity of the emotion, and express it in a way that a behavior is still helpful to you. So if the anger is showing up because your boundary is not being respected, then while you feel the intensity of that anger, you carry yourself in a way that leads to you notifying the other person what your boundary is and asking them to respect it, which makes it more likely for them to respect the boundary. Versus if you're acting from the anger, you go further away from the goal by trying to control the other person and dominating them. This might be unchanneled, unrefined anger. Anything that takes you away from your life's purpose, from your small or big goals, is unrefined, unchanneled emotions. Previously, I've talked about ghaira in this podcast, or righteous anger in podcast 241. I've also spoken to you about equanimity, regulation of emotions, integration of emotions. Regulation is a type of channeling which does not always mean calmness. Regulation means choice in your behavior, even under the pressure of the anger that you feel in your body. The moment you cannot choose, when your mouth moves faster than your values, when your behavior is driven by some unknown force, then the emotion is no longer channeled. And there's no external unknown force, by the way. Your behavior is always from your emotions, and your emotions are always from your thoughts. So trying to remember that there is a difference between acting on anger and acting from anger. Acting on anger means that your emotion informs you. It will sharpen your perception, and it's going to alert you when there is a misalignment in the situation. Acting from anger means the emotion has decided for you how the situation is going to unfold. And when you act from anger, your behavior seems automatic and you move further away from the goal in your life rather than closer to it. At a neurological level, anger always arrives through the primal, animal brain first. Every experience that enter your awareness, somebody else's tone, a facial expression, somebody's disrespect, threat, any injustice, or anything that's unfolding outside of you, is initially processed by the reactive survival mechanism of your mind. This is the part of the brain that is wired for speed. It's wired for survival. It is not wired for wisdom or health or your happiness. This part of your brain, its job is to keep you alive, so it prioritizes immediacy. When anger is acted upon on this level, what you're going to be seeing is going to be lack of character, pure reactivity. The animal brain does not evaluate meaning or values or any long-term consequence. It moves fast. This is why reactive anger to you is going to feel urgent. It's going to feel very self-righteous. The higher brain, the prefrontal cortex, does not operate at this same speed. It takes maybe a few milliseconds longer for it to come online. And in everyday life, this delay is really imperceptible. But in the world of emotional processing, this delay is everything. These milliseconds are the difference between reaction and choice, the difference between refined anger and unchanneled anger. Your refined anger shows up not in the absence of your initial surge or your primal brain's reactivity. The refined anger is your ability to wait through it long enough for you to choose how you want to respond to it. The skill I'm asking you to learn here is to not to suppress the anger, but to learn to contain it. When the prefrontal cortex comes online, thought becomes possible again. You can have a strategic response. This is when your alignment, your intentions enter the system again. In this manner, channeling anger is a learned neurological skill. It is your capacity to tolerate the discomfort long enough for you to have a choice, for you to allow the impulse to rise and pass long enough for the cognition to reassert your leadership. And in that very brief pause, your anger is transformed from a reflex into a resource, a form of energy that you can tap into. This very short delay, just for a few milliseconds, is where agency lives. This is where your raw animal type of aggression will become refined ethical power. The irony is that uncontained anger makes itself seem very useful and necessary, but overall it weakens your authority. Contained anger seems difficult to do, but it actually strengthens your authority. When your agency is intact, so is your authority. If you can tolerate the discomfort of anger without immediately expressing it, you have become master over it. In this state, you're consolidating your power over your emotions. And this is what makes a difference between you as a system that reacts, you as a system that creates their life. Channeling anger preserves your authorship over your actions. Even when the emotion is intense, you still own it. And to me, this is the most beautiful proposition, and this is the highest level of life you could be living, while using all of your emotional fuel from either end of the spectrum that is created for you to channel while you live your life on this earth. What you are not taught is how to really gain this skill. And of course, anger is not talked about in any sort of educational sense, specifically for women. Because for you as a woman, starting from a very young age, your morality, your religiosity, your spirituality was told to you that it's tied to you not feeling anger. When universally, what it's actually tied to is you not expressing an anger in the reactive way and not suppressing it. Here, morality is not about being nice or quiet or always being agreeable. Morality is giving you the structure that contains that emotional energy. Morality is the container that shapes and molds the anger within it, so that when it comes out, it is in a shape of something useful, something helpful, something that builds your life. It is not more or less virtuous to feel anger. It is more virtuous to not let your anger run you. It is more virtuous for you to hold your power over your anger. And in practice, this just looks like you responding to anger in a way that preserves your dignity and you remain coherent. Your virtue, your morality, your religious values do not ask you to suppress anger. They ask you to refine it. They ask you to prevent it from becoming the energy that is wasted. And all of this means is that it asks you to keep the energy intact while changing how to use it. Suppressed anger is going to create a lot of resentment, even numbness, and refinement does the opposite. It allows for the anger to remain present without letting it dictate your behavior. Morality urges you to ask yourself, what use of this energy will actually serve my objective? Without this morality, the anger will rush towards immediate release because that will feel like relief. And you will say the sharp thing. You will escalate the conflict. You will give them a piece of your mind to prove the point, all to demand recognition. And in the moment, it will feel satisfying. But satisfaction is not the same as having power. All these reactions just weaken your position. They reveal too much about you. All in the meanwhile, you're training others on how to provoke you. All a very disempowered place to live from. Refining your anger will conserve your energy, and it will give you authority over others. Because what it's doing is redirecting force away from momentary relief towards long-term impact. Through morality and guidance in Islam, the energy of anger is held and it's concentrated, and it is applied where it actually moves you towards the outcome. This way you're establishing authority and moving away from volatility. And this way you're teaching people that your anger does not make you predictable or reactive. It makes you very precise and very sharp. I will also remind you in this podcast that aggression does not mean hostility. This anger does not automatically translate into hostility. Because a hostility, again, is the reactive nature of anger. It wants the other person to feel what you feel immediately. Hostility is rooted in dysregulation, and anything, including hostility, that escalates the situation while claiming to be very important and self-righteous is exactly the opposite of it. Hostility feels powerful in the moment, but it's structurally ineffective over time. Anger and aggression, when regulated, is completely different. It is a directed force. And the expression of this force will lie sometimes on opposite spectrums because it can be quiet, contained, and deliberate, and it can be loud and confrontational. What I'm teaching you today is not to be a soft woman completely. It's for you to be a precise woman. Softness is sometimes the goal, but not always. Sometimes loudness is the goal. Other times it's not. Angerlessness is never the goal. Accuracy is. Responding with precision, meaning that the response matches the moment. No more, no less. Sometimes precision looks gentle. Sometimes it looks immovable. Sometimes it looks warm. Sometimes it looks dominating. And none of these are moral failures. They're just your measurements, precise measurements of how you're going to take actions. Softness may be your tool of precision when the situation requires de-escalation. But the same softness becomes a liability when it is applied out of fear or social conditioning. Here, softness is not precision. Here, it's miscalibration. So then, in this case, precision would demand honesty about what level of force is actually required. When there's overt injustice, a boundary violation, then anger directed with precision is going to look firm, unapologetic, and even dominating, and that's okay. When the force is applied precisely and accurately, it is a channeled emotion. Channeling an emotion, being precise, does not mean that you're minimizing yourself to remain palatable. It means you just don't over or under express yourself. You don't soften yourself prematurely, and you do not escalate yourself for an immediate relief. You choose the exact pressure that moves your reality. And that precision may unsettle people initially, especially the people around you that are accustomed to you as a woman leaking energy all of the time. When you're falling into over-explaining or people-pleasing, other people around you will be caught off guard when you're implementing this skill properly. But this is exactly what a precise woman does when she's channeling an emotion, especially that of anger. Your refined anger through precision gives you a lot of leverage. It gives you authority and dominance without the noise and the drama. And if that looks intimidating for others, it's not a problem for you to solve. It's mostly a first sign that the energy is finally being used properly. A human being descends not because they feel anger, but because they surrender their agency to this animal instinct. When you allow the fastest, most primitive impulse to dictate your action, your speech, this is where you might have fallen from the highest capacity of a human being. This is the descent described in the Quran as asfala safilin, meaning the lowest of the low. And you can rise and elevate yourself from this place when you channel your emotion and you place your emotion under stewardship, when the energy of that emotion is acknowledged and directed properly. This stewardship means that you as a human being remain in charge. The feeling is strong, but it does not get the final say. Your thoughts, your values, and your alignment is always allowed to be online, and they are the ones organizing the response. You as a believer, as a Muslim woman, are not exempt from this descent. Not because you feel less anger, fear, desire, or grief, but because when you act from coherence and structure and morality. Your internal system stays ordered. Your emotions have a place and time. This is what allows you as a believer to feel fully without becoming reactive, without falling or descending into the low levels of human existence. The most dangerous form of anger is refined anger. Not dangerous to people, but dangerous to harmful cultural norms, dangerous to the unspoken rules that keep women marginalized. Women usually attempt to survive these systems by staying dysregulated, apologetic, and sort of just unsure of themselves. But refined anger will rescue from all of that. Refined anger is dangerous to the harm that is created towards women in the name of hierarchy. That is what makes it threatening. Cultural norms that harm women rely on women being reactive, over-explaining, overly softening, constantly justifying, performing, absorbing discomfort so other people don't feel uncomfortable. Refined anger removes all of that from your life. It does not argue with the system. It doesn't debate with it. It just simply stops complying. A woman with refined anger can still show respect and practice her adab and speak with composure, but it is very hard to mess with her because she no longer organizes her behavior around being approved of. This kind of channeled anger is dangerous because it exposes how much power was being extracted from a woman's self-doubt and emotional labor. It is dangerous because it exposes a structure where drama was celebrated and expected. Refined anger works by changing your behavior while it lets reality respond. It does not fall into the energy of convincing people. Refined anger creates discomfort and disrupts the status quo. It destabilizes the unspoken, biased social rules. In this way, refined anger is not destructive, it's corrective. It is dismantling harmful norms by coherence. And once you embody coherence, it's going to be hard to argue with you. Channeling your anger at this level is alchemy. With that, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, O Allah, refine my anger in a way that brings me closer to you. Give my anger structure and give me agency over it. O Allah, make my restraint way more effective than my reaction and let my composure dismantle what harms me. Ameen ya Rabbul Alameen. Please keep me in your du'as. I will talk to you guys next time. Before you go, I would love to hear from you. If this podcast spoke to you, please take a few moments to leave a review. Your words will help reach other Muslim women find this message. And think of it as a small act of sadaqah jariyah, a continuous charity, because your review could be the reason another sister finds healing. And plus, I read every single one of your reviews. They truly mean a world to me. Please take a few seconds to rate and review on the podcast platform of your choice. Inshallah, I will talk to you in the next episode.